Well, lingering symptoms of COVID-19 are having a significant effect on the nation's workforce.
Many folks suffering from what's commonly known as long COVID are being forced to leave their jobs for protracted periods of time, in some cases for more than a year. Now, a recent analysis of workers' compensation claims in New York found 56% of long COVID claimants either received medical treatment or were unable to work between 2 months and 1 year. Another 44% either needed treatment or were out of work for a year or longer. Now, 18% of those impacted didn't return to work more than 1 year. The Government Accountability Office estimates long COVID has affected as many as 23 million of you throughout the country, struggling with how to restart your own career.
So joining us now to discuss this, whether you are suffering from long COVID or just have the will to make a career or money change, is CBS News business analyst Jill Schlesinger. She is the author of the newly published book, The Great Money Reset. Jill, it is so great to have you here. So one of the things that you say is we have to analyze our financial picture before deciding to make one of these big life changes. How do we go about doing that properly?
I call it the Fab Five because no one wants to do any of this, okay? But if I call it fabulous, maybe you will.
All right, I like that.
Okay, so what are the Fab Five? Number one is you need to account for your resources. So that's pretty easy. It's what you own or your assets and your income. But when you're looking at that, you also want to look at things like your benefits, or are you entitled to a future pension? You want to make sure you get that under your resources. And of course, you would really want to make sure you add in your retirement plans and things like that. Okay, next, what about liabilities? Liabilities means your debts. What is on hand? That's really the kind of the critical thing that bogs people down. Once I look at my obligations to the bank and to the school loans, then I'm stuck. So just write it down. I'm not telling you to do anything with it. The third thing that we really want people to focus on is your money going in and out, what you're really spending, your consumption. It's so hard to do. I know it stinks. But if you don't do that, you're kind of missing the big picture. Look at your housing situation. Are you renting? Do you own? Is that good? Is it bad? And finally, what about some obligations you've made to people? Like if we're together, right, we're in a partnership and I say, I'm working really hard so our kids can go to private college. And then I say, oops, no, I'm changing my mind. I don't want to do that. Like, that's not cool. Or if Errol, you and I are married and we say, hey, you know what? We got to take care of our aging parents. We just can't go flying off to do whatever we want to do. So those 5 steps are critical in the process.
It's interesting, too, because you'd be surprised how many couples aren't on the same page for some major financial decisions down the line. Chapter 3, bully your boss. I'm guessing that's about what you've said about benefits and things.
Well, it is, but, you know, it's because I make up an acronym and it's not bully.
You gotta make this
I'm
catchy.
not a bully, okay?
No, not at all.
I'm just saying that right now. But it's about, it's a framework again, because this whole book is about frameworks for creating the right decisions for you. So when you're going and talking to your boss and you are trying to figure out, can I get a raise? You really want to make sure that you're doing your homework. And bully, the B-U-L-L-Y, and the Y is don't yuck it up, is all about making sure you understand what you're asking for, button up your ask, and understand the environment. And, you know, really practice and understand that your boss has a lot of real big pressures on him or her. And, you know, that should be taken into account. Obviously, listen, we're in media. We know that this is a downsizing moment for media. You don't march into the boss, pound your fist on the table and say, I want more. You must understand where you stand, where the industry stands, where the company stands, and what you're doing to help your boss.
I like don't yuck it up. I think you should make T-shirts that say that.
I know. I promised my girlfriend I wouldn't curse in this book. I almost did it. I had like one word. That was bad, you know.
Okay, well, we have to ask you about having cash on hand because that's one of the things that is essential to financial security. Tell us how much we need and how that all factors into these decisions.
I've been obsessed with high-yield savings accounts since the pandemic because of this very reason.
Because we're actually making some money off of the interest.
Short-term CDs, high-yield savings, money market accounts. So normally, you know, I always come on the air with you guys and I say, okay, have 6 to 12 months of your living expense in an account. But if you're going through a huge reset and something's going on, I would encourage you to make that a bigger number. And I would say that cash is kind of better than a therapist, a drink, or an anti-anxiety drug to quell your emotions. having enough cash to get through a transition period can mean the difference of doing it successfully or not so successfully. And the other thing is, even if you've got a pile of cash and you're doing a reset, you're trying to figure out what's next for you, don't deplete everything. You've got to leave yourself with a cushion when you figure out where you are on the other side of your reset.
I think that's such a challenge right now because so many people have spent down those cushions that they've built up over the years in this period right now, whether it's because of inflation or layoffs or other problems that they've had during the
Quick
pandemic.
question on additional education. Lana and I have been talking about this. She's done every fellowship under the sun. Highly educated. And I was sitting here thinking, maybe I should use some of my cash to go to a fellowship. I'd love to, but I'm not considering a career change. For people who are factoring in these decisions, what should they consider?
You know, this was a huge question, especially during the pandemic. A lot of people contacted me on the podcast, on my radio show, and they said, I want to go get another degree because I do want to make this great reset. And the thing that's really important is I can't tell you whether more education is good or bad for you, but I can have you ask yourself 3 very specific questions. You ready? So, number 1, what are the specific skills or credentials that I am gaining by this degree? And by the way, what will that mean to my future career? Number 2, how am I going to pay for it? You're going to plow through your savings to do it? You're going to ask your parents or your family to help you? You might be coming with some strings. Are you going to go into debt? You go into debt with these loans, you know, whether or not you come out better on the other end doesn't matter. The debt's still there. And finally, is there a cheaper alternative? And what do I mean by that? I was just absolutely floored by the number of people who were going through certificate programs, who were going to coding boot camp, people who said to me, my boss split this tuition at a community college. I got the credential. It was really important. Or a teacher that said, I could have paid for a lot of a sort of a big name degree, but my school system didn't care where the name of the degree was. They cared that I had a master's. So I got a pay bump and I went to the cheaper program. So consider those 3 questions before you start writing out tuition checks.
Thank you so much, Jill Schlesinger, the Great Money Reset. Go grab it now. Always great to chat with you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jill.